This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.
The young shining cuckoo is fed by its foster parents on insects and spiders. But the korimako, or bellbird, has a much more interesting diet of nectar. It's been something of a radio personality and has sung on shortwave radio to Australia and the Pacific nations for 30 years. However, the early recordings failed to reflect the versatility of the bellbird, with its wide variety of liquid notes and artistically placed clicks and bell-like sounds. It's not surprising that Maori mythology describes korimako, the bellbird, as the messenger of Tane, sent to herald the coming of the sun.
Community or chaos? We can construct and nurture community or fall into chaos. Over the next hour, Marvin Hubbard hosts conversations toward creating a fairer, more equal society.
Community or Chaos is made possible with the support of Quakers Aotearoa. You'll find them online at quaker.org.nz.
Good morning, friends. Today we have Ann Daniels, the president of the Nurses Union or Nurses Organization. Really glad to have you with us, Ann.
Kia ora koutou.
You can podcast this by going to oarfm.org.nz and going to podcast and going to Community or Chaos. Also, if you want to enter a contest about your favorite show, just go to the same place, only stay at podcasts, and there'll be questions about the awards show where you can enter your choice at the website. And it's really good to have you on. I think we've spoken before. Why did you decide to become a nurse? Because you're still a working nurse, as far as I can tell.
I am. I work casually in a tertiary hospital emergency department as a senior nurse. But my day job, of course, is as president and co-chair of the New Zealand Nurses Organisation. Why did I become a nurse? Well, interestingly enough, if you'd asked me the question at the time, I was 18, I'd finished high school. My mother said, well, what are you going to do? I'd been pushed into teaching and I hated the idea of being a teacher. The other two choices were I could get married and have children, or I could become a nurse. The idea of getting married wasn't so hot either, so I found myself in nursing school. And those were the choices back there in the 1970s. For women on the whole, if you were in mainstream. And so there was no calling for me. It was a job. My mother pitched it to me as a job that would actually enable me to travel overseas. And I thought, well, that's not bad. But I really, besides being a St. John's cadet and volunteer, I had really no understanding of the health system at the time or no calling to be a nurse.
Well, you certainly have that calling now.
I do. I understand nursing today. My understanding of how gender discrimination has impacted on the choices of women has absolutely broadened and deepened over the years, particularly since I took master's level feminist papers, which even more broadened my way of seeing the world. But I see nursing and being a nurse as a real opportunity today. We touch the lives of everyone, no matter where they are, rich, poor, disadvantaged, advantaged, no matter what ethnicity. It is a job of opportunity, and it is a job of privilege. And it opens doors for us to actually challenge all the things that need to be righted in our society.
I've certainly experienced the decency and commitment of nurses. And the one time I've been in a hospital for a hip operation, a public hospital. But I also think that one of the differences between the middle class and the working class are choices, even now. You get a lot more choices, I suspect, if you've graduated from university, if you've had parents who could either help fund you or had the experience themselves. And also, I think there are more men going into nursing than there used to be. Is that true?
Sorry, what was that?
Are there more males going into nursing than...
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I started doing my nursing training, one of the first male nurses was one of my tutors at Thames Hospital. And, he was a great guy. I still remember him well. But I had no idea what was coming. Thames Hospital also opened nursing training up to men back in the late 70s. And one of the two males that decided to start nursing training became my husband. And his name is Chris Daniels. And he's an Australian, so he flew over here on holiday and didn't go back. And yes, there are a lot more men in nursing these days. In the ED that I work in, there are quite a few men, and they're an interesting group. They are very, very dedicated, but they see the world a little bit differently to us. And as a die-hard feminist, I also see that they tend to have, unconsciously or not, more opportunity than the rest of the female nurses or rainbow nurses that are in our area of work. And, that's a bit sad, really, that the gender discrimination continues, the idea that men can do anything that they choose to do better than a woman. And that just demonstrates and reflects how unequal our society still is today.
I suspect that as long as you have unequal societies that are structured in such a way that inequality is prevalent in all, particularly economic equality, but also gender inequality. The inequality begets inequality.
Yes.
In our public health, is our public health service failing? And are public health workers such as nurses and doctors and cleaners doing a poor job, or are there more fundamental problems such as the possibility that the public health service is underfunded and has been underfunded for some time? Could you talk about this?
Well, there's several ways of looking at this. One of the reasons why we doctors and nurses are striking so much right now, and when I say nurses, I mean midwives, healthcare assistants, kaiwhena, and community support workers as well. We're striking because we can't do our job properly. And when you say, are we doing a poor job? Based on the competencies that we should be meeting every day, based on the legislative and professional standards that we have that should be guiding our practice, we're not meeting those. And we're not meeting those because from an infrastructure point of view and the funding point of view, we just don't have the resources or the funding to do our job properly. And that translates into poor workforce planning. There is no comprehensive health workforce planning for all those involved. And I'm talking not just about those who are clinically have clinical jobs, but all those who support us as well. And that is the problem. We're doing a much worse job than we ever used to when we look at ourselves comparing to the OECD countries. And in fact, the ASMS recently put out a report to show that the health and wellbeing of New Zealanders is definitely declining under this current government. But I could hazard a guess to say that it's been doing that for about a decade now, because we have been for quite some time about the need to properly fund, invest, and hire enough people to do the job that needs to be done.
I would guess that you're probably working harder, actually. The workforce is probably working harder than they were 10 or 15 years ago because of the lack of enough people to do the job.
Well, that also has different perspectives to it. The number of people who are accessing hospital care now has increased markedly, particularly over the last few years. And so therefore there is more work. We have an ageing population with health needs that are much more complex and with higher acuity. So yes, that adds to the workload too. But what really is the problem behind all of this is the fact that we don't have enough funded primary health care, preventative care that will actually reduce the pressure on hospitals. And we need to have a health system that is based on keeping people well as opposed to trying to fix them when they're sick or broken. And this is an approach that the Norwegian government and people have. And as a result, of course, most people would know that Norway has one of the highest health and wellbeing indicators in the world. They have one of the best health systems in the world. And this all comes down to an ideological approach that health is an investment, not a cost.
When we're talking about health of people, the things like decent housing that's available to everybody and the ability to afford to go to a doctor as soon as you feel like you need it, would these things improve health?
Absolutely, they will. I think free primary health care, free dental care as well, free mental health care, they are all those things that would support a better health and well-being. But behind that, we also know that 85% of health issues come from what they call the social determinants of health. So as you've already suggested, dry, warm housing for everybody, free education so people can be educated. Countries like Norway, who have a highly educated population, have better health and well-being because people know how to make the right choices to keep themselves well and do something about it. And also having the opportunity to have jobs so that you've got money in your pocket and you spend it on the things that will actually keep you healthy, have a well-being, be connected with society, and an inclusive society as well that doesn't just is not just founded on those who have the most money and the most power, but is inclusive of all our people, those who are disabled, disadvantaged, all our different ethnicities. For instance, ethnicity does matter, and that's very clear because we've got a very overt racist health system that is constantly putting Maori and Pacifica at the bottom of all our health statistics. So it goes on. We need to do something about it.
When you were mentioning Norway, actually, I thought of Finland. The reason I thought of Finland is they have a system very much like Norway, but they've got Their resources are lakes and trees. They don't have oil. They don't have, yet they're able to have taxation and a much more equal society and a welfare state. And so when people say New Zealand can never afford it because we don't have the resources, we're not rich like Norway or Sweden, I think of Finland, which had no more resources than we had, yet took a very different road.
Yeah, and it's as I spoke earlier, it is about a choice, and it is about a decision to actually make health an investment, and it means that we also do need to have a tax system, and also I suppose the way we work, the things that we put money into, like research and development, and keeping all the great number 8 wire ideas that New Zealanders have, invest in them here, keep them here, don't sell them off to some overseas company that will just sell them back to us. These are the things that we actually need to think about. I do believe that we can actually turn this Titanic of a ship right around. And we don't have to do it all at once. What we need to do is have a plan, and we need to stick to the plan, and the plan must not be a political football. We must learn to see health differently and provide it differently. It needs to be accessible, affordable, free, and culturally safe for all.
Can you talk about the Buller Declaration and petition and the 5 issues mentioned in it?
Oh, thank you for that. Well, a number of your listeners hopefully know Malcolm Mulholland. He's an amazing guy who really came into media and public attention when he stood up for getting cancer drugs that were freely accessible in Australia funded here in New Zealand, because there was no good reason for them not to be. And the coalition government made a promise to make that happen when they came into power. But we all know, of course, that they tried to renege on that. So Malcolm stood up and led a campaign called the Patient's Voice Aotearoa to ensure that the government kept its promise. And it did to a certain extent. But he's also a West Coast boy. And when the hospitals over on the West Coast were having trouble recruiting and retaining nurses and doctors over there to provide timely health care, he got involved in standing up for them as well. Because workforce all around the country is an issue, but workforce for our rural areas is even worse. So the Buller Declaration is all about, in a nutshell, demanding of all political parties to agree to have a fully funded, accessible, affordable, culturally safe public health system, not a private one, a public one. And that's pretty much all it is in a nutshell. But it's for those who are interested in more detail, they can go to Patient Voice Aotearoa, have a look at it. There's a petition on that website that you can sign and share. Malcolm is going around the country, or starting on the 1st of November, a hikoi for health, to gather up more signatures as he actually winds his way up towards Parliament, where he will hand the petition signatures over to the parliamentarians, our MPs for health, on Parliament steps on the 18th of November. And so I got involved because he reached out to the New Zealand Nurses Organisation and asked us to help socialise the petition. But also very recently, because he's starting the hikoi, he asked me to help organise the Hikoi for Health March in Dunedin Hospital, in Dunedin on the 3rd of November at 3:30. So we're meeting outside the dental school for those who are listening. And this is for the public. It is for the public and all the healthcare workers and community support workers, but it is mainly for an opportunity for the public to stand up and be counted and say, the healthcare system is for us and it should be delivering for us in the way that will allow us to be healthy rather than sick. So that's what the hikoia is about.
What day is that of the week? Is that a Friday?
In Dunedin, it is a Monday.
Monday, okay. Monday, and what time again?
At 3:30 outside the
3:30.
Deaf School,
Okay.
and we walk up George Street to the Octagon, where we're going to have a number of speeches. Malcolm will be there, and also the mayor, our new mayor of Dunedin, has just accepted the invite to speak as well.
In your opinion, is the coalition government, with their talk of public-private partnerships, moving in the direction of privatization of our health system? And can you talk about this and how you see and what will be the results if that continues?
It's definitely moving towards privatisation, but it has been for a number of years. To be perfectly frank, Marvin, I do not understand this government. I do not understand how any government can ignore research evidence that's put before them that says the decisions you are about to make or you're proposing are wrong. And then they go out to the people and ask for their opinions, and they're told by 99% of the people who have put in submissions, and I might observe that the number of submissions that have gone into Parliament in the last 2 years are extraordinarily high to the point of being historic. And they, on the whole, have been ignored. So we have got a government right now that is ignoring the people, is ignoring the evidence, and it's deaf and totally out of touch with what is right. So in all of that, they know that Americans' privatized health system doesn't work. America puts the most money into health and has one of the poorest outcomes. So why would you make a decision to actually follow behind a country that knows that it doesn't work? But they are. And so you have to ask what vested interest we have here. We have overseas corporates that are going to make money out of the poor health and well-being and the inability to access surgery in the public system when it's needed. And the last point I would like to make is that they're assuming that people will, in desperation, try and find money to spend on health insurance. Well, the majority of the people in this country don't have that kind of money. We can't afford health insurance. So that is going to impact, once again, on the declining health and well-being of the people in Aotearoa. People are going to continue to wait on the extraordinarily long wait lists for treatment, and they're going to get sicker, and that's going to put more pressure on the hospitals. And when people are sick, they can't work, they can't generate income or tax dollars, and it is just a downward spiral into a deep, deep hole, which is going to be very hard to come out of.
Well, I'm an old man.
No kidding.
And I can remember when governments, I remember Norman Kirk. So that shows you how old I am.
I remember that where I was on the day he died.
Anyway, governments used to expect to govern for the common good.
Yes.
And I don't think I've seen that in a very long time from any party or any government, to be honest with you.
In New
any
Zealand?
Governing party in New Zealand or in America.
Mm.
And people in parties seem to govern for the interests of those who are supporting them, either financially and in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, isn't this a conversation we should have? what is the common good, and how can we insist that our political parties govern for the common good?
Mhm. Well, I think that we need to look at our system. Our system has been tried from good old Merry England, where they once thought that they ruled the world. And I think it's absolutely time that we actually ask ourselves whether the political system that we actually have now is fit for purpose. I don't think it is, because it's certainly the idealism of the government being voted in by the majority. So therefore they can say to themselves that they represent the majority and they can make decisions on for the majority is not working. Because once they're in government, particularly with this government, all the promises that they've made have absolutely not come to fruition. And that is absolutely unacceptable. If the government is elected by the people, they should be accountable to the people, and they're not being. So we need to change that system. One idea I've heard is actually having people's committees to actually keep government in check and make sure that they are accountable to the people around the country. And I like that idea, having much more transparency. And having also, I suppose, a system that doesn't allow a government to go off the rails and not do what they said that they were going to do and were voted for.
I would agree with you, but also suspect that one of the strongest influences on government is the idea of eternal growth. I mean, the economic system is based on growth and economic growth. And I remember David Longy once saying that inequality was the engine of the economy in supporting the change that were happening in the mid-'80s.
Mm.
So I think we have to go pretty deep, really.
We do. We also need to start asking ourselves why it is that, well, I know for myself, I was taught as a child growing up in New Zealand that to be successful, I needed to be educated, I needed to work hard, I needed to save hard, and I needed to do it for myself. The discussions in my household never talked about doing anything for my neighbours, for instance, or the wider family. And all I ever saw growing up were people who were so-called successful, were rich, had houses, 2 cars, a boat, and trips overseas. And that was deemed success to me. But it's not. And in terms of economic growth, the idea that you have to get more and more and more all the time is obviously not only killing our people, but it is killing the world.
It's also, I think it's hurting our ethics.
Oh, absolutely.
But also I think that many people in New Zealand do still have an ethic about caring for their neighbors. They don't have, It's hard to find a way of expressing it politically, perhaps. But I know that one reason I'm happy to live in my cul-de-sac, which is a working class cul-de-sac, in Normanby or Mount Mara, Northeast Valley, is because of my neighbors. How helpful, and not only how friendly they are, but how helpful they are. And I know that I can call on them.
That is true. I know that all my neighbours around me, I think that innately New Zealanders are wanting that kind of society. And we're doing it in small pockets around us. And I certainly know that if we decided to look outside our Eurocentric way of living, that we have examples of doing things differently. Other societies always put family and the wider tribe, if you like, first and the individual last. And so that was kind of what I was referring to earlier, that I think we're right with us. We have Mare and Pacifica who are accountable to their families first and their needs and wants. If they fit in with the greater good of the family, then that will be supported. And that is something that I think that we need to translate into our political system. And I can just hear it. You know, some listeners might be saying, well, you know, she's a closet red under the bed, but I'm not. There is everything right about actually helping your neighbour out, helping your family out, and also standing up and fighting for the best kind of society that we can have that is inclusive and fair and equitable for everyone. And righting the wrongs, like with housing and education and jobs and all those sorts of things. But this current government and also the sweeping right political ideology around the world is quite frightening to me.
It seems to me that no matter what people say, we are facing change. We're facing change not only because of the unjust economic system, but also the climate change that this very system is encouraging. But it seems to me that if New Zealand is going to be a livable, humane community, we have to look at each other for collective support. When the difficulties come, if we have a collective consciousness, why, it'll be a lot more likely that we'll come out of this in a more humane way.
Yes, I do think, as I said, I believe that most New Zealanders do think and see like that. And I believe the massive protest around Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the huge protest, 35,000 standing up for our hospital that was fit for purpose in Dunedin, the recent strikes as of last week, where collectively all the unions stood up together. That ideology is becoming more overt within New Zealand, and that absolutely gives me hope for the future. Because you're right, you know, we have to have a structural infrastructure within our New Zealand economy that stands on the things that are important, like clean water, clean air, and having an economy that is based more on helping each other and keeping our land in a way that it should be. Being very, very aware of all the things that we're losing right now due to climate change and all the poisons and the plastics that are going into our system. All of that impacts on health as well. We absolutely have got that opportunity, and I think the people have the power to make that happen. It's just that we need to change the system first and agree to change the system to actually make it work.
We had more people going on strike. You had not just health workers, but teachers, firefighters, and other public servants. Yes. Probably more people going on strike than we've had for the last 30 years on one day.
Yes.
Inland Revenue's own research shows that the tax system in New Zealand is quite inequitable. That
yes.
The wealthiest pay less taxes than the average person in New Zealand. And that, in fact, if you're wealthy enough, you may pay no taxes.
That's correct.
So how can we possibly have a more equal society if we have a tax system that's so unequal that it feels corrupt in a way?
Yes, well, going back to what I said, we need to change the system. So right now we're heading into an election year. So every political party needs to have the guts and the courage to stand up and put a progressive tax system into place. And I say that quite deliberately because that is exactly what Norway has got. Norway has got a progressive tax system. So that means that the more income you have, whether you're an individual or a corporate, you pay according to your ability to pay in tax. And the reason for that is because it fosters social equity and sustainability of health, education, and social security. So we can do that too. And we absolutely know that if we don't do that, we're going to actually continue down the same lines as we are now, that the poorer will be worse off and the richer will be richer. And all the research is pointing to the fact that that's absolutely happening now. As a nurse, I know that we're being told, and teachers, doctors, dentists, everybody are being told there's no more money to put into the pay of nurses and doctors and everybody else to keep them here, retain them, and encourage them to stay. But money, billions of dollars, are being wasted on the debacle around ferries, about the constant rework around building new hospitals, roads, military and Air Force, the tax breaks for landlords and tobacco companies. So we know there is money. It's about the choices this government is making and where to spend it. And if you look at all of those things, it talks about giving money to the people that are overseas, like the one recent government contract was given to a company that did the gully in Wellington, which failed abysmally because they had to be taken to court to finish the job properly. But they've been given another contract. And you have to ask yourself why. Why is that happening? Who knows who? Who's in bed with who? What is the vested interest here? There is money. We need a tax system that is fair and equitable. And we need to actually decide that government is for the people and not for themselves.
All the people that went on strike last week, we have an obligation not only to support political parties, but we have an obligation to talk about politics among ourselves, talk about economics around ourselves.
We do.
Because the changes we need aren't going to come unless the people demand them, unless the people demand accountability, but also have a vision.
Yes.
The politicians won't come up with a vision unless the people come up with a vision.
No. And I think that is an opportunity for us to all take up. And I'm very, very much aware that today, of all days, Rā Whakamana is happening right around the country. So the Council of Trade Unions have supported the opportunity of the people to sit down with each other and actually talk about what that vision might look like based on our agreed Te Tiriti o Waitangi founding document, to do things differently so that we can actually have what I suppose we could call reimagining Aotearoa and what that might look like. And we have to do it. And I believe that more and more people are getting involved in that. But what I do see in these rooms when I go to the meetings like this is a lot of people who are older. What we need in our schools, right from the time that the children are in kindergarten or those sorts of places, we need to talk politics. We need to teach politics and economics. We need our young people to understand what that looks like, what the philosophical ideologies are behind them, so that they can make better choices as they grow and start to take the positions of power in government and all the different organisations that actually make this world go round.
Do we need to find leaders who actually challenge our preconceived notions, especially about economics?
Yes, we do. But leadership, you have natural leaders who know the difference between right and wrong. And thank God we're actually seeing some of them come into Parliament right now who appear to be unafraid to challenge the status quo. But we need a whole lot more of them. And that's why I'm saying we need to go back to our education system, which is once again very much Eurocentric. It needs to change. And we need to understand what we're educating our children to do. It's not job, but it's to grow up and be part of a society that we all want to live in and in a land that we all want to live in. And that absolutely needs to be fundamental to our education system.
But I don't think we can wait for the next generation. I think we have to
Almost too late.
have this discussion now.
Absolutely. And I think that that's exactly what's happening around the country right at this moment as we speak. And I am absolutely so grateful to the Maori leadership that we have in this country to making that happen. Because change needs to come. We cannot continue to do what we're doing or else we will reap the same results. And that is the destruction of life as we know it, pretty much.
20 millionaires. Too many people there don't really care. All they care about is getting more than their share. Too many millionaires. Too many millionaires. They got it all, but they got nothing to spare. There ain't as many as there was last year, but there's still too many millionaires. Used to be kings and queens, now it's limousines. Buddy, won't you give us a break? Spilling the beans on our TV screens. How much can somebody take? Well, tell us all about it, what you have done. You could write a book on how you made your first million. Tell us all about it. What do you think about taxes, unemployment, and the kitchen sink? Too many millionaires. They got money coming out of their ears. It should have been ours, but it's all theirs. And too many millionaires. Too many millionaires. They got it all, but they got nothing to spare. They complain about the people who live on welfare. Too many millionaires. Yeah, now. He's a connoisseur, a raconteur. Deep down inside, he's real shy. He tells his chauffeur, but he don't call me sir. Ain't he a wonderful guy? Tell us all about it. Tell us again. Tell us how your money ain't everything. Tell us all about it. Tell it to our face. purpose in the human race. Yeah.
That was Darren Watson, Too Many Millionaires. And we're speaking with Ann Daniels, the president of the Nurses Association, Nurses Organization. Now, it seems one of the things that happened in the early 1990, I think it was the Employment Contracts Act, which denurtured unions. And I think one of the first things a neoliberal government does is try to take power away from working people. So don't we need to have more unions and more working people acting collectively and talking collectively?
You're asking me that question,
Yeah.
Marvin? Absolutely. And as you're probably more just as aware as I am, that the Employment Contract Act in the 1990s decimated the unions by simply making unionism non-compulsory. And that was sad, because I think that up until then, the people of New Zealand didn't understand really what they had, and they lost it simply because they wanted to save the amount of money they were putting into union fees. It was a choice that they had, and they made it. But since that time, as we all know, pay and work conditions have been slowly eroded. And equity, certainly for women, has become absolutely a major, major issue, because women in this country who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet shouldn't be put in that position. So we do need a higher union density. But I've got some good news for you, Marvin. The latest stats put out by CTU have shown that younger people are starting to realise how important unionism is, and the number of people who are joining the unions in the 20s and 30s age group is climbing, and I am absolutely so grateful for that. But once again, our children, our teenagers and our young adults have not been taught the place of unionism in this country and what it's done for pay and work conditions and for the health and well-being of the people in this country. And I think that needs to be taught in the schools. It's my hope that in the coming days, when we have the election next year, that this conversation will be had, because we absolutely need to grow our unions, because the unions are us and we are them, despite what this current coalition government is saying. It is not the leaders who are making the decisions, it's the members of the unions that are making the decisions to strike, to stand up against the demands of the government to have pay cuts and unsafe work conditions.
Don't the unions actually need to educate? We need to educate ourselves. We need to educate ordinary people like myself about economics.
I don't know that it's a union's responsibility
nobody
to
else
teach.
is going to do it.
Well, that's the thing. Earlier I said, we need to look at our education system and say, what are we teaching our children and why? We are still teaching them very much about how to become successful and rich on their own merits, forgetting about the fact that a lot of people in our society certainly haven't got that option. Yeah. What we do need to do is start talking about things like, why does tax matter? Why do we have politics in the first place? Why do we have elections? What does that mean? what are the different parties standing up for ideologically, and how has that impacted on society? And I think unionism is absolutely part and parcel of that. And our children and our young adults need to know. They shouldn't be sliding into adulthood not knowing all of this stuff.
Well, also, I think when somebody joins Unite or some other union, young person, there should be a place where they can go and they can hear about these issues and talk about these issues. I think if we wait for governments to put in that kind of radical education, it's going to be a long wait. Somehow it has to come from the people.
Yeah, and the Council of Trade Unions have certainly recognised that and are working hard right now as we speak to further develop their website so those sorts of things can happen. But it needs, and this is what's wrong with that system, it needs the person to want to go and find out to actually get that information, as opposed to it being taught in the schools of this country so everybody knows about it and can make their own choices about what union to join, what political party to actually get involved in.
Can you talk about the Dunedin Hikoi? Because we're running out of time.
Absolutely. So look, thanks, Marvin. I just want to remind people that Malcolm Mulholland from Patients' Voice Aotearoa is starting the Hikoi for Health on the 1st of November in Invercargill and travelling through the country up to Wellington, where he's going to hand over the petition that is demanding a fully funded, equitable, culturally safe public health system on the 18th of November at Parliament. And that he's going to be stopping in a number of towns along the way. It'll be in
Dunedin on the 3rd at 3:30?
And Dunedin, it's on the 3rd. Meet at the dental school at 3:30. And then we're going to march past the hospital through to Stewart Street up to the Octagon, where a number of us are going to talk about why we're standing up for health in this country.
Thanks a lot, Anne.
Thank you very much, Marvin.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.